Welcome to Dixie
and the King. I'm an Elvis tribute artist, rocking the cradle with a much younger wife.
and we are coming together to figure out this thing called life.
Take this journey with us through our unique and fascinating relationship as we tackle marriage, parenting, and spirituality.
We find ways to live a better life through our experiences and learn from professionals and everyday folks along the way, and how to thrive in today's world.
And welcome back to another edition of Dixie and the King.
My name is Dixie Gray, and this is...
The King.
Or George Gray,
Yeah.
whatever.
Hey, thank you so much. This is podcast number 4.
Yes.
And
4.
The first one was an introduction. The second one was a little bit more. We got into the age difference.
Right.
And then the Costa Rica one, which was one of my favorite podcasts.
Yes, I love Costa Rica.
But now we're going to get into some things that are going to benefit families and benefit our individual health. And that's why we have a very special guest. Her name is Tammy Garcia, and she has a wonderful podcast called Naturally Inspired Podcast. Hey, Tammy, how you doing?
Good. Thank you guys so much for having me on your podcast. This is so exciting. Number 4 already. It's going by so quickly.
I know it is, and we're having such a great time with it. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, why don't you tell our subscribers and our listeners who you are and what is Naturally Inspired Podcast?
Okay, so Naturally Inspired Podcast was started by me about a year ago, and I started it because I just really felt like there wasn't a voice out there to talk about alternative ways to stay healthy. And what I ended up finding was that those healthy ways really aren't that alternative. They're actually pretty mainstream and natural. We've just kind of lost sight of, the simple things we do every day. So I just thought, well, this is a great way to just start talking about it again and getting people more familiar with things they can do easily to be healthy.
Very good. So, and just because I've seen your podcast and I know you personally, you and your husband Jason have become wonderful friends.
Absolutely.
How has your podcast changed from when you first started to what they are now?
Well, they have changed. Like I said, in the beginning, I started it because I just really wanted to, bridge that gap of information and remind people that there's things we can do with our lifestyle to make ourselves healthy. That's really why it started, because I just felt like, man, we're forgetting about all the simple stuff and we're rushing to all these quick fixes to fix things. And that was the focus. But then as our health became kind of priority number 1 in this country, then I realized, wow, people really need this information about how to stay healthy on their own and things that they can do on their own from home. And then it's just kind of taken on that feel of its own as we discover, some roadblocks that we might face when we're trying to find information, and just other people's stories about how they've overcome it. So that's kind of how it's molded.
I think the thing that's impressed me with your podcasts are some of the guests that you've had on there. I think it's just been crazy.
Yeah. I've been so blessed with just some of the most intelligent, smart, truthful, inspiring people. And it really just goes to show you that, when you kind of feel like you're following your purpose, your fear goes away about what you're doing. And the message becomes so important to you that you'll just kind of stupidly go out and ask, hey, you want to come on my podcast? Because it becomes all about the information and helping people. And that's really what I'm about with this podcast. And so it's kind of really, it's grown me as a human being just to be more focused on information and not worry about all the other stuff, not care about what people think or whatever. I got this message I want to spread, and I'm going to do my best spreading it, and hopefully it'll affect people's lives in a positive way.
Right.
Well, and that's really why we wanted to have you on today is, we have kids. I have kids going to school. We have adult children. We have a 1-year-old. And really in this world that we're living in, I just want to put out there a message of what is it that we can do to keep our family healthy? What is it that we can do to keep our kids healthy? And I know that you've had such an amazing group of individuals on your podcast, and you've learned so much. So I thought that you would be the perfect person to come on and just spread that message to our listeners about, what is it, the everyday things that we can do to keep ourselves healthy, to keep us out of the doctor's office, to keep us off of medication. Because I know, I have an ailing grandfather, and they try so many different medications, and oftentimes the side effects are worse than whatever he has going on. So for me, it's like I want to keep my family out of, I think medicine has its place for sure. I'm not saying anything negative about that. I think it's great that we have what we have. But what can we do to be proactive to keep ourselves and our families healthy?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think as moms, we take on that burden specifically, right? Like, it's a very personal thing for us moms because we're the nurturers. And so we just automatically take that role on of keeping our families healthy. And in this climate, it's become harder because we have this, thing that's affecting us all and we're all concerned about. So it really falls down to the basics, right? Like back to eating clean. I know that fast food's convenient and we all, are guilty of taking advantage of that, but
right.
We really have to understand and make the connection again about purposeful eating. We eat to nourish. We eat to feed our bodies. And we've lost a little bit of that connection over time where it's become more about convenience and, oh yes, my stomach, I got to quiet my stomach, or even it has become entertainment for a lot of people to eat, to go out to eat
right.
instead of do an activity. So we have to kind of make a shift. And the great thing about it is awareness is everything. A lot of people just aren't aware that eating out has become an entertainment activity. Just not aware of it because
right.
It's been so easily, we're so fortunate in this country. We can go down to any corner and grab food and, why not? It's there, right? And we're also fighting against our own survival instinct because it's in our DNA to survive. That means fatten up for winter, right? like we
right.
really are. We forget that we still are like these primitive human beings, right? We still have these instincts. Just because we live in this modern world doesn't mean that we're not going up against our instincts. So I think one of the main things is around eating is that there's a lot of shame built into the way we eat. If we're battling, keeping our weight down and stuff, there's a lot of shame in that. There's a lot of expectation of what you should be doing or look like or feel like. And I think we need to drop the emotions around our food. I think we need to reconnect to it in a way where it's nourishing our bodies. We feel gratitude for it. And therefore we put only good things in and we appreciate what it's doing for our body and start looking at it from that perspective instead of this kind of like anything goes, it's just food.
Well, and I even think the way that our food is advertised, right? So, I take my girls to the grocery store and they're like, oh, let's get these fruit snacks. They're healthy, Mom. It's fruit snacks. And it's like, no, sweetheart, they're not healthy. And even just understanding that fruit itself has a ton of sugar in it. So making sure you're eating the right amounts and you're not, I'm eating all this fruit, so it's good for me. Well, yes, you do need some fruit, but if you just ate fruit all day long, you're still eating a ton of sugar. And so just that education of, it just seems to me that almost everything that you can get that is packaged at the store is loaded with a ton of sugar. So, trying to educate my kids.
Yeah. Cross the messages too, because they're mixing our entertainment with our food, especially with our kids. That's how they sell cereal. So if they have a particular cartoon character that they like, they see it on the cereal box, it then becomes translation of entertainment to food. And that's not what food is. Food is not entertainment. Food is sustenance.
Right.
And so it's very, that's what sells, but that's kind of the nature of the beast in our country of marketing and being, consumers. And so we have to, it's a free marketplace. So that should exist. I'm not against free marketplace, but when the consumer starts demanding what they want more and stops, paying for that stuff with their dollars, then the marketplace changes. Then they're forced to make those things more available to us. They don't sell that stuff as readily available because we don't buy it, right? So we have to take personal responsibility, and we have to say, no, I'm not going to purchase those things because that's mixing my entertainment with my food. And I don't really like that message. Yeah. I'm going to start buying something else because this is what sustains my body. And this is what I want to feel good. Because ultimately, that's what it comes down to, right? We want to eat clean and stuff because we want better results. We want our kids to have better results. We want to be healthier. So if we focus on the result that we want, then we won't be as easily sucked into that whole entertainment vibe and food mixing. And
yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is that everything we're always looking for convenience. Our lives are so busy. I have 2 other careers. I'm on the radio and I do the Elvis thing. Dixie has her job that she does. Plus she's she's kind of a stay-at-home mom. She's got the kids to watch, and so sometimes it's the convenience of finding those foods. It would be nice if there was like a McDonald's type of a thing that offered fast foods, but it was like celery and carrots, those kinds of things. But unfortunately, we're in this mindset with marketing that that stuff just doesn't work. The big boys are all about the convenience of hamburgers and cheeseburgers, and we're all have that. I'm just talking about it right now. My mouth is starting to salivate. So you're right. We have to take personal responsibility and start thinking about convenient style foods that we can take on the go. And
I think one thing that we've done, and sometimes I'm better at it than others, but really that meal prepping. So I know that I have a busy week coming up. So what sort of meals am I going to plan for the week that fits into my schedule? I already know that I have dance for one of my daughters twice a week. I already know that we have tutoring. I already know that, I want to go to the gym, and I know those things. So, it's hard as parents and as busy parents, but just realizing that we do need to take that personal responsibility for our families and be planful about our week and about our days, instead of, there's going to be some days where it gets away from you, and that's okay. There's certainly no shame in that and none of that. But, if 80% of the time we can eat healthy, I know that I feel better, at least.
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, even kids, they won't tell you maybe right up front that, but if you've ever taken a kid on vacation and just been like, okay, it's all holds barred, you can do whatever you want. And then eventually, they're like,
I'm like, yeah, we just did that.
Yeah, right. When you're in Costa Rica, because you're on vacation, and you should have those times. And I think that people need to relax a little bit into the fact that a little bit is better than nothing. It tends to be very black and white. They start these fad diets. I'm on the keto diet. I've got to do it this way. And then they slowly fall off. And then it's like, well, I blew it. Yeah. I'm off. You know what I mean? You hear those stories all the time. And what we need to relax into is that change it's gradual. Real change is gradual, and it compounds. So when you start to you can get one habit under control, like say you're going to start with a green drink every morning, and you start doing that. And maybe that's your only commitment for 30 days. But if you can stick to it, then all of a sudden you're like, I think I can handle changing what I eat for lunch. Right. It's really more about a gradual, sustainable change, because when these fad diets come in and everyone jumps on the bandwagon, some people even have great results at first, but then you'll notice they start to, go back to their old ways because they haven't really gone through the journey of change. Right. Because change is the journey. You don't step out, being the goal that you want. It doesn't happen overnight. It is, everybody has to work at it. It's a gradual thing, and we don't accept that. We want everything now. Right. It just doesn't work that way.
One thing that I've learned from you, Tammy, and we've known you and your husband for quite some time now, is I never was a big supplement guy. My my thought was just eat pure and you'll get all those nutrients. And now we're starting to find out, and even scientists are saying this, is that the nutritional value of the foods that we are eating nowadays is almost non-existent compared to 20, 30, 40, 50 years back. Back in those days, they would let the land recoup. The farmers would move their crops around. And now there's such a demand that they're using artificial fertilizers, and of course then there's the chemical aspects of it. So now I am a big believer on supplements. So if you can kind of get into, and particularly this stage of this life that we're in with the pandemic and all that's going on, and that's a whole nother podcast. But in your opinion, and with the research that you've done and the professionals that you've talked with, what should we be concentrating on as far as additional vitamins and minerals and those kinds of things?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I think, all of the professionals I've had on the podcast that we've discussed this issue are in agreement that our soil is depleted, and it's actually more than depleted, because it's actually toxified in some cases with glyphosate and different chemicals and herbicides that they use. An interesting fact is that I've heard people say, well, I don't know if organic's really worth it. I don't really know if it's worth it. Well, an interesting fact is that, they don't even have organic food in Europe. Like if you were to ask them for organic food, they wouldn't know what you were talking about, because all their food's organic. They're not allowed to use those pesticides and whatnot in other countries. And even there's a difference between Canadian food protocol and American food protocol. So we're allowed to use all the dyes and the red dyes that have been banned in other countries. So that's a red flag for me as a mom,
Absolutely. That was something that one of the first times I took my kids to Mexico, we had vanilla ice cream, something so simple, and it tasted so different than it did here. And I asked the lady running the ice cream shop why it tasted so different, and that's what she said. She said, you Americans use all kinds of chemicals to sweeten this with. We don't. It's just sugar. And so that was interesting. And yeah, a little eye-opening, right? Because I was like, oh, they can't even use that in Mexico.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And, quite honestly, the only thing that pushes that is money. It's all about money. It's how fast we can produce it, how long we can keep it on the shelf, what's its travel lifetime like. These are all, we have plants that are producing food for the globe, the entire globe. So it's all about keeping down the cost. And we've really, with regulations and whatnot, we've dampened the market for farmers markets and for little mom and pops, because the regulations are so high. Just having a home hobby farm like I do, I can't sell my eggs from my driveway without liability. I have huge liability. So it's not worth it for me. So we have to look at those kinds of things, because slowly over time, I think we can work to open up this more local marketplace that would be a whole lot healthier when it comes to our food.
So what supplements, like if you could recommend, or what are the most important things that we could be taking as parents? What should we be giving to our kids?
Because the big thing right now that we're learning is the reason people are dying with the COVID, along with other things, is our immune systems have been compromised over the years. So I know, talking with you, building up that immune system.
Yeah. And this is also a great opportunity to realize, with the pandemic, people were frightened to come to America specifically because of the state of our health. They knew Americans were unhealthy. Obesity is at an all-time high. So many people are on medications. These are all contributing risk factors. So that's kind of embarrassing, right? Like as a country, you guys are worried about the strongest country in the world because we're not healthy enough to make it through this virus. So that was really something that impacted me on a personal level, thinking, wow, like our health is in such a bad state as a whole that this is going to be a bigger hit to us than it would be in a different country. So, but as far as vitamins go, right now, I would say all the doctors on my podcast, Dr. Scott Jensen, who's been very vocal about proactive medicine. He's also a senator. He highly recommended preventative, some of his protocol includes his patients to lose 10 pounds. He literally says, I'm not going to do anything until you lose 10 pounds and then we'll talk. These are the kinds of measures that really we need to have honest conversations. And it's out of love. It's not trying to be mean or shame anybody. Like I said, if we can take these emotions away from our food and the shame and all this expectation, unrealistic expectations we have for our bodies and all of that stuff, if we can break that stuff down and get to the heart of you just want to feel good. That should be the goal. You want to feel good, your best. So if we can kind of break down the emotions, then we can start having honest conversations, right? So, but the recommendations from most of the physicians on my podcast have been vitamin C, right? We want everybody on vitamin C because we know it's an immune booster. Vitamin D, and vitamin D has really made a statement in the news, even in the mainstream news, which you don't normally see. There's some interesting data correlating with African Americans. They're lower in vitamin D because of the melanin in their skin. And so their rates of COVID are higher. So that's something that we're going to be looking at over time to see if that actually has an impact on your symptoms with this virus. So I think it was Dr. Merritt who mentioned, certain levels of vitamin D were actually almost immune to getting the virus. Some of the data that they've pulled in so far. So that's a really interesting thing to be on the lookout for in the future. Zinc came highly recommended as well. That's what they're treating with, in Asia. They're using a lot of zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D. And then there's one that you may not have heard of, which is NAC. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
No, what is that?
It is, it's an amino acid, but it's just known by NAC. And what that does is it helps with your glutathione levels. And now this is an interesting correlation that people should think about because we know age is a risk factor, right?
Right.
And as we get older, our glutathione levels drop just naturally from aging. So that's interesting because NAC builds up your glutathione levels. And we've seen great results with NAC when it comes to the virus. Now, there's a little kind of caveat to that, which is Dr. Mercola. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's pretty popular. He's a natural doctor. He's had a great presence online for a long time. He just reported that they're looking at restricting the use of NAC, which I find very interesting because we're seeing great results with it. So something to watch out for anyways is just keep your eye on that. Try some NAC. It's normally known to reduce oxidative stress. So it's like anti-aging. It's very popular in the anti-aging community with people who work, with trying to limit aging side effects. So it's interesting because it boosts your glutathione level. We're seeing that older people are mostly affected. This seems to be helping in that demographic. So I hope that we can get to the bottom of some of these things, and have some true experiments and data collecting to find out what really works before the pharmaceutical companies get their
right.
And I think real quickly we need to throw this disclaimer out there that everything that we're talking about is for entertainment purposes only. That we always encourage people that might have something to check with your healthcare provider first, because we're not saying go out and take vitamin C and D and zinc and all these other kind of things. Everybody's got to find their own way to there. We're just kind of providing for entertainment purposes. I just wanted to throw that out there because I didn't want everybody running down and all of a sudden ODing on zinc, and I don't know if you could do that or not. But
I don't know. Yes, I'm certainly not a doctor, but
these are key terms that you can look into, and I mention them just for that purpose, that we should be aware of these topics so we can look for studies. You can get on the NIH website and the government websites. There's thousands of studies on some of these supplements that you've never heard of. They're right there at our fingertips, and we don't ever hear about them because they don't really make it to the mainstream news. And in my opinion, they don't make it to the mainstream news because of advertising.
Right. Yeah. And it always is follow the money, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm thinking about, when I'm thinking about keeping my kids healthy in particular as they're in school, and thank goodness they're allowed to go to dance right now and things that they weren't able to do for a while, is really that keeping them active is so important for their mental health as well as their physical health. I mean, when everything was shut down, I really saw an impact on them. And so I think getting them outside on nice days, going for walks, whatever you can do to keep them moving, and us too, obviously.
Right. And you were saying vitamin D, the natural sunlight. I read a study, and I can't remember if you and I were talking about this, is that the best time to absorb that vitamin D is between sunrise and at about 11 o'clock-ish, to where the sun's not too bad.
Right. Yeah. Definitely getting outside and movement. And I think as a mom, I'm constantly promoting creativity right now.
Right.
Just creativity, because that's kind of the antidote to being depressed or, focusing on negative things in the news or what's coming down the pipeline or not coming down the pipeline. Because there's so much uncertainty for kids.
Right.
They don't know what's going to come next. Nobody does, but especially kids, because they don't even have the experience to kind of put it into context.
Right. And right now we don't even know. We get to start school again in person pretty soon, but we never know, is that going to last a day, a week, a month? Are we going to make it the rest of the semester? And that's been really difficult for them, switching back and forth. And I've really had to navigate as a mom. Is it best just to put them in online school so that they have the certainty? Or is it better to risk the uncertainty and get them back in the classroom with their friends where I know they actually do better? So just trying to navigate that, and my decision, our decision so far has been they do better at school. And so I want them to have that as long as they can. But, just navigating that, I think, for most parents these days is really difficult.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And you voicing your concerns on here today is so important, because now more than ever, because we are isolated, we don't feel like other people share our concerns or our point of view, or, that we're out here alone trying to wing it, and make decisions best. And all our kids are different. Are different. So what one decision is good for one kid may not be the right decision for another kid, but I
think I think our emotional and our mental and physical and health needs are all the same. And that's where I enjoy your podcast, because you touch on all of those, and why you were such a great guest. And of course, we're going to have Tammy on more, because this is just a small segment of what she does. And then I wanted to ask you, and can you give out your website so people can find you as well?
Yeah, we have a new website up, actually, because of censorship, and it was becoming difficult to watch my wording even on some of these platforms. And so I really want to build a community of like-minded people where we feel free that we can talk about things and not be offensive to other people, or if you're going to want to be there, basically, is what I'm saying. So the new website is livenaturallyinspired.com, and it has a daily video on it. It has a daily blog post, and then of course my weekly podcast where I interview a professional or a author or somebody with just a great story. So it's definitely tons of content and tons of sharing. And I just hopefully can be a positive voice for everyone out there that really needs it right now.
Very good.
And we really appreciate that. I know I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast and all the different professionals. I really believe in chiropractic. That's been something that has literally changed my life. I was a competitive gymnast, and it really did save me. So, I know some people don't really like the idea of a chiropractor. I love it.
And it's so funny because some people are like, chiropractic isn't anything. And that just goes to show you we are so different.
We are different, but I think it's great to listen to everything out there, and then you can decide for yourself what is best for you. And that's why I love listening to your podcast, is you have so much out there to listen to, so many different points of view, and you can just take what pertains to you and leave what doesn't.
Leave what you don't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I encourage all of our listeners and subscribers, first and foremost, thank you for checking out our podcast. The numbers are looking good, and we just want to keep that door of communication open. So if there's a topic that you want to learn about, or if you need more information on us, or particularly our guests like Tammy, you can get a hold of us by going to our website, which is dixieandtheking.com. Our email is contact@dixieandtheking.com, and we're on Spotify.
We're on Spotify and TuneIn. We're working on getting on other podcast platforms. So let us know, what is your favorite way to listen to your favorite podcast?
And we have a YouTube channel, so everything's looking really good, and it's all about having this conversation with other like-minded people, parents out there, families, blended families, Elvis tribute artist families. There's a lot of those, I'm sure. But anyway, we thank you so much, Tammy, for being our guest, and we look forward to other podcasts and conversations with you.
Oh, thank you guys. And congratulations on this awesome venture, because you're just such a fun dynamic to watch. And I know that your fan base is going to really enjoy getting to know you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And for all those people tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Dixie and the King. We know there are possibly millions of podcasts out there, and we really appreciate you landing on ours.
We'd love to hear back from you with suggestions, episode ideas, and possible guests. If you'd like to connect to our guests, we would love to share their contact info with you.
Feel free to tell a friend and share our podcast with them.
To learn more and watch past podcasts, please visit our website, dixieandtheking.com.